Welcome to the Ricky Bank from the Citizens Bank studio. Hope you're having a great Friday. And here on this show that continues to celebrate so many amazing people working in the trenches every day to make Mississippi such a great place to live, work, and play. But this is Friday on the Ricky Matthews Show. My good friend Jeff Duncan from NOLA.com and the Times Picayune is joining me, and we'll jump right over to him. It's been dynamic because we talk about the Saints just about every Friday, really 52 weeks out of the year, and we're lucky to have access to Jeff. We all hoped that this would be a better season, but the Saints are still tied for first.
Amazing, right? It's amazing, right? Any other division, they'd be pretty much out of it, but here we are. And I think the NFL must love this, Ricky. I mean, the Commissioner Roger Goodell, they love parity, and you've got basically 3/4 of the league still alive in the playoff hunt, maybe more than that.
Yeah, I mean, that actually, really that was a brilliant move on his part. I mean, at the end of the day, it was a brilliant move because you don't have the ability to have a dominant team over 10 years anymore. It's going to change, and that was really important. But anyway, welcome back to the show, my friend. Has it been an interesting week at Saints training camp? I mean, how is it being a columnist when the Saints are struggling and don't really have actually they have an identity, and it's not a good one. But how is it to be, working in that atmosphere?
Well, unfortunately, I've had a lot of experience, now not in the last decade and a half when the Breeze Payton era was really rolling, but certainly before that, we saw a lot of this. And it's not a lot of fun being out there. The players are kind of tired of talking to us, and we're kind of tired of talking to them, and it's starting to sound like a broken record. So, it gets to be a little bit drudgery, but it's part of the job. And I think fans and readers in this time really look out to us. They want to know what might be wrong with the team. They tend to not trust the organization as much, or what the Saints are saying in the front office. So they look to the media to try and find answers. So sometimes our traffic on the website goes way up when the team's losing because of that reason.
Yeah, it's an interesting year. Biggest disappointment for me, and I think for a lot of people, is Derek Carr. He just hasn't panned out, and it's hard to watch him because usually when he drops back, 99% of the time he's going to dump it off to somebody, or he's going to not do anything. He's going to get sacked or whatever. And on third down, it's a disaster. You don't see that getting better, do you?
No, well, I mean, I think the key downs in football, the key situations is where he struggled, right? Third down and the red zone. Now, they played a little better in the red zone of late. But everything and we talked about this on our Saints Insider podcast this week, everything that we do, we have to provide context for fans, for viewers and readers. So you have to look at it within the context of the opponent. And that was the worst team in football last week. They've won one game. They've fired their head coach. They're in complete disarray. And yet here we are with 9 minutes left in the game, and the Saints are up by one score at home, and really struggling offensively. One of their touchdowns was a special teams play. That's not good, Ricky, and I think fans are smart enough to know that. So even though the Saints did put away the Panthers late with a couple late scores, I think fans understand the standard has to be higher than that.
And, it's so interesting to me that a 37-year-old tight end who has only 4 catches so far and 3 of those being touchdowns is the thing that sort of ignites the fan base. I mean, it's good to see. Don't get me wrong. It's a cool story, but it's unfortunate, isn't it?
Well, I tell you, I have to say, he surprised me even. I was pretty down on the signing of Jimmy Graham, but we've got a good story coming out this weekend that my colleague Luke Johnson's going to spend some time with him this week about how he got himself into shape to where that's been the most surprising thing. I noted it when he first signed. I remember Jimmy Graham being very slow late in his career. He was up around 280, couldn't run anymore. And that was the Jimmy Graham I remember. And I thought, why in the heck are they signing this guy? But he's been a different beast. Working out, really training mainly as a cyclist. He's gotten really into it all over Europe. He's been taking, these 100-mile bike rides, competitive bike rides, in these events. And you can see it. I mean, he can run much better than he used to be able to run because he's dropped so much weight. I think we noted earlier in the year he's down below 250. So that, as we all know, Ricky, when we get older, the less weight we have, the better off, right? And so he's got a little more agility than he had, and he's always had incredible hands. He's always had the frame, and we saw that in action the last week. So he's become a weapon, and Dennis Allen's mentioned it numerous times in the last week or so. He wants to see more of him, certainly in the red zone where he's 6'7" and can become a real go-to weapon.
I'm surprised they didn't do it already, though, Jeff. Why are we learning this so late in the season?
Yeah, it's a good
he
question.
does ignite the team. He does have great hands.
It's a great question.
He can catch balls nobody else can catch.
I know that catch he made on the third down to me was the biggest play of the game, other than the punt block, because the Saints were looking at kicking another field goal there. That's just not good enough. The fans were already kind of, anxious. And he goes up between two players and makes one of the best catches they've made all year. That was a big-time play, and that shows you the ability that he has. And I have to say, Derek Carr made a great throw on that. He put it right where only Jimmy Graham could get it. It was either going to be incomplete or a catch. So you see sometimes the flashes from this offense and some of the flashes of playmaking ability, but there's just too few far in between, and inconsistency rules the day here. And look, they've got some good opponents coming up. They got the Giants this weekend. The Giants are one of the hottest teams in the league. Then they've got to go to L.A. on a short week, play the Rams, who are also playing well. So it's going to be very interesting. I'll say that. The one thing I would say is these last four games, I mean, it's all right there for the Saints. If they win out, they're going to win the division. If they even win 3 of 4 games, Ricky, they're pretty much going to get in. If they can win this game on Sunday, they can almost throw the game in L.A. It really doesn't matter that much as long as they win the final 2 in the division. So there's a lot at stake for this team. We'll see how they respond.
So do you think, of course, Shaheed's coming back. Do you think Lattimore will be back? Do you think Michael Thomas could be back?
Well, they're eligible to come back for that Rams game. The problem is it's a short week. So it's not a typical, Sunday game. You're going to have fewer days to recover. There's really no way to know and either of those guys. But that would be a huge boost if you get Rashid, Thomas, and Lattimore back down the stretch. And I definitely think Taysom Hill is going to play this week. I think he could have played last week. To be honest with you, I think the Saints were just being very cautious with him. They looked at the opponent, and they'll never say this publicly, but we're playing a 1-win team at home. We can rest him up, have him healthy for the stretch run, and that was a wise decision.
So I guess, fans who are listening, they've heard every angle of this dangle that you and I are talking about. But I got an interesting thing I want to mention to you. I want to talk about some inside baseball for the media industry. And I've watched it so carefully. I watched numerous stations or YouTube channels that cover the Saints. I've watched, Bobby Abeer and how he's, trying to do his thing onto YouTube. And I've paid attention to VUE and WDUSU, WWL Radio, WWL TV. I've watched what you guys are doing. I've watched 2 or 3 other niche guys. I've watched New Orleans football. And I'm not going to try to put anybody in any particular category right now. But what I've noticed is you have you guys who really are covering it as clearly as you can. You got some others that are kind of faking it. You got others that are just trying to exacerbate it as much as possible to create as many views. And some are just flat arrogant. And when you watch some of the interviews and you watch, some of the coach availabilities and whatever, it's got to be hard to sit there and watch what used to be a more defined media world that you were in. And it's kind of the Wild West now. And how does that affect you as a reporter? I'm just curious about that.
Well, it's certainly, I'd say this, you're spot on. I mean, it's really changed a lot in the last decade or so, covering the team. I think it's difficult for fans and for news consumers, your viewers and readers to draw the line between what's real journalism and kind of what I call like fanboy journalism. There's just a lot of gray areas out there right now. And the problem you have when fans start covering the team in my opinion. And look, there's a lot of them that do a great job, and they know football, they know the Saints, they know whatever field they're on. It's not that they don't know a lot or are passionate about it. It's that when you're passionately involved emotionally, you tend to go up and down with the results of the team, and we try to pride ourselves on being objective and staying down the middle. Now, some fans will tell you they want passion, they want emotion, but that's certainly not the way you can do it professionally. You can't be invested emotionally in that regard. So we try to maintain an objective line in our coverage.
Hey, listen, when we come back, I have one more observation about that, and then we'll talk about current injuries and, how you think the Saints are going to match up against the New York Giants. We'll see you after this break. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank studio. I'm still a little stuffy from my week-long bout with COVID. Very different than last time. This is like a really, really, really bad cold, but because we have some compromised people in our family, I've had to quarantine like you normally would. But last time I had low O2 and all that stuff. I didn't have that this time. I just mostly have stuffiness and headaches, and doctors treated me pretty aggressively because of my heart arrhythmia that happened last time I had COVID. I did not have any issues with it this time at all. But I feel great. While I may not sound on top of my game, I'm thrilled to have my friend Jeff Duncan with us today from NOLA.com and the Times Picayune. We were just chatting a lot about sort of the way the team is covered today, and it's just interesting for me to watch it. And it's a kind of like new media, colliding with traditional media that also has a digital footprint. It's really a crazy world that we live in today. Hey, you've helped me see something though. I got a little caught up in Bobby Hebert was a little bit too, I don't know. I wasn't so sure about him, but I've been paying closer attention to him. And you told me that when you were at training camp with him, that his observations were always something you wanted to listen to. And so I paid a lot more attention to him. And you know what? He calls it like he sees it. He does not pull any punches. And his observations, Jeff, usually are pretty darn on target. I mean, he's got such an interesting way that he expresses himself, as you well know. But I'm a bit more of a fan of Bobby's than I was before.
Oh yeah, Bobby's great. And it's funny, I referenced him in my column over the weekend because I found it funny in the locker room last week, Ricky, when talking to some of the players, and they were all taken aback by the booing at the Superdome, and they've lived relatively charmed life in New Orleans with the way things have gone. They haven't really seen the downside of pro sports because they've been so successful here. And so I had a column, if you saw it last week, about the history of booing in the Dome. I mean, I've seen so much uglier scenes than what we saw against the Lions. And Bobby Hebert was the subject of a lot of it. When he went to the Falcons and came back, and I mean, he endured that for a long time, the passionate fans we have here. But this booing at the Dome is not a recent occurrence. It's gone on as long as this. I think Heath Schuler got booed in his second game here as a quarterback. There was other quarterbacks got booed in the preseason. So it's a tradition in New Orleans.
Well, haven't you, that actually shows you the novice level of some of the reporting, the way there's been so much anxiety about, the fact that the Dome is booing. I thought that's why your column was so incredible, because it's almost like a shot back to these guys in the media that were trying to, figure out, why are they doing this and how did this make you feel? And you're like, dude, this is nothing new. The Saints fans expect excellence, and when they don't get it, they let you know.
Yeah, and I'd say this. One thing, it feels like this team hasn't connected with the fans very well. Maybe it's some of the infighting on the field we've seen. I don't know exactly what it is. I wrote that this week. There's a little bit of a disconnect between the team and the fan base. There was that great love affair between Drew Brees, right, and the fans, and then Sean Payton brought this kind of confidence, almost cockiness to the organization that I think they needed at the time. And, that became this gravitas that the Saints carried themselves with. There was a pride in wearing the fleur-de-lis that we hadn't seen before. And I just think that's missing now. The fans want to follow somebody. They want somebody to be the leader, and there's a little bit of a vacuum there, and I don't know who's going to step forward or if anybody's going to step forward on this team.
Hey, listen, man. The problem with Carr is this: that when he speaks to the press, he never says anything. He never says anything. There's no. I don't sense any authenticity about him whatsoever. I don't sense being honest with us. I don't think he's being honest with the media. He just, it's like he's a wallflower, and he never says anything. He doesn't own up to his own behavior. It's really an incredible thing, actually, and it frustrates fans.
I'd say that's a fair point. Now I remember Drew Brees had a way of politicking there. I remember his own teammate, Scott Fujita, called him annoyingly optimistic. That was his phrase about Drew. And so Drew was kind of like that, too. He was kind of senatorial, almost like a politician. But he had a different panache in front of the mics and the cameras. And maybe because he had skins on the wall, he won a Super Bowl here. He had a longer leash with fans. But he would tend to do that as well. I mean, just you go to Drew when things were bad, and he'd never let on, similarly to Derek. But Derek just hasn't built up that collateral, that equity with the fan base so far. And he hasn't played well enough, in my opinion, for him to be having these, incidents on the field. I've just never seen anything like that in my time covering the team. Certainly not a teammate going after the starting quarterback the way Eric McCoy did. And you have to know Eric McCoy. I mean, Eric McCoy is a mild-mannered guy. He's a team captain. He's not prone to volatility or to emotion like that. So I think if it were one incident, you could explain it away. But we've seen a pattern of behavior here, and I think that's why it's a little disconcerting. And what I would say lastly about this situation is, I don't think it's as big as maybe some of the fans and maybe even some of the other media is making it out to be, but I also think it's bigger than what the players and some of the coaches are making it out to be. I think it's somewhere in the middle.
Hey, what made Drew Brees, you said it, but what made him able to be that way was he left everything on the field. And while he had good games and bad games, he set records. And, man, when you're in that position, it makes you able to sort of be however you want to be. And in Carr's case, he's not left anything on the field yet that we are inspired by. I mean, he's had these little moments of brilliance, and he said, we just have to put it together for 4 quarters. Well, he keeps saying that, but he keeps not doing it. And then this other motion of lashing out. I've seen people in corporate environments that lash out at others. That's just their way of saying, I'm insecure. It's your fault that I'm failing, and that's just where I am. And in his case, he's done it so many times. It's clear that he has a hard time being accountable for his own actions. Now, I wish he would just say, I played like crap. I mean, nobody else is responsible for this. It's me. I got to quit dumping the ball off, so much. I got to look down the field. I got to trust my receivers more. But he doesn't do that, man. You keep wanting them to say how he really feels. And if he really feels what he's saying, then he's a terrible leader. That's what I observe.
Well, this is some of the same frustrations I think Raiders fans had with him during his previous tenure with Oakland and Las Vegas. It was exact same things. That's why we've talked about it before. I think we all bought into, it'll change in the Saints organization, this functional organization, this culture. And lots of times it doesn't. I mean, I've learned over the years, very, very rarely do you have a Drew Brees type signing in free agency where you have this kind of incredible or DeMario Davis turnaround. It just doesn't happen very often. Often you get what you saw before. We've seen that. A good example would be the 2 defensive tackles the Saints brought in, Nathan Shepard and Colin Saunders. They're both solid players, but they haven't lit the world on fire. They're basically what they were before they came to the Saints, and that's usually how it plays out.
Well, look, with Carr, let's face it, some of his best numbers were under John Gruden, and John Gruden doesn't suffer fools. John Gruden doesn't take anything from anybody. So you can only imagine what those conversations might have looked like in the conference room with the doors shut.
Yeah,
So,
and I think that's a fair point, Ricky.
yeah.
It's not just Derek Carr. I mean, there's the whole organization. I think the standards have been lowered, and so everyone's looking for an easy answer. I've said this before. Who can we scapegoat? What's the simple answer? And it's not simple. It's immersive here, and there's problems across the board. And just look at what Sean Payton has done in Denver. Look at how much better Russell Wilson is playing this year with good coaching compared to last year. I think it's all. I mean, they might win that division, Ricky. I mean, it's been an amazing coaching job.
Hey, one other quick comment before we close it out. One of the things that I noticed in this game, the defense played better, but truthfully, if Young had been more accurate, there were a couple of plays that would have turned into touchdowns. I mean, did you see open receivers like I saw them?
Yeah, I thought Bryce Young was terrible in that game, and I say that thinking he was going to be a great player, but I don't know if his confidence is shot or what, but they've got a major reconstruction job with him in the offseason to get him built back up because he played. That's why I say context. Yes, the Saints played better on defense, but man, there were guys open. He wasn't even giving his receivers a chance to make a play. And I don't know how they're going to win a game the rest of the year. Maybe he had a bad game, but he looked terrible to me.
We're going up against a hot New York Jets team. Who would have thought I would be saying that? But they are hot. You got to be a little concerned. We got less than a minute.
Yeah, Tommy DeVito, right? The Italian sensation. They've won 3 games in a row. They're one of the hottest teams in the league. And just one quick thing, Wink Martindale, their defensive coordinator, one of the most aggressive in the league. They will blitz on third down. Huge test for Carr and the Saints offensive line.
Sounds good. Hey, it's been great to see you, my friend.
All right, Ricky. Have a great weekend, buddy.
You bet. Hey, when we come back, we'll continue the conversation. We'll see you after this break.